Given Bitcoin's recent pullback, many are speculating as to how low the Bitcoin price will go. So let's look at the data to see where we're most likely to bottom out. Today, we're going to be looking at how low Bitcoin could go in this pullback. And as we can see, Bitcoin over the past week has had a little bit of a decline in its price from around $73,000, nearly $74,000, higher than our previous all-time high, to about $65,000, $66,000, over a 10% pullback. And as I film this, price has rebounded slightly, but there is always the chance that we could dip even further. So many are actually wondering, speculating as to if we were to dip further, where Bitcoin's price could actually bottom out to just try and find the most optimal entries. So I think first and foremost, if we look at the golden ratio multiplier, we can see that Bitcoin's price smashed through this green 1.6 accumulation level and actually found a little bit of resistance at this 2 level here. This is the 350-day moving average just multiplied by 2, which is actually kind of where we anticipated Bitcoin price topping out at the cycle peak. If we actually look at historically, Bitcoin usually tops out at a lower line than the previous, according to the golden ratio multiplier. So if we just look at the previous 2 peaks here, we topped out here at this 350-day moving average multiplied by 5, and then the 350-day moving average multiplied by 3. So we were maybe anticipating it to top out at this 350-day multiplied by 2, but we've hit this prior to the Bitcoin halving event in record time. We've never accelerated this high in the Bitcoin's price action before. So a pullback may have been a little overdue potentially. And I think it's also a good one to watch for where we could actually bottom out if we had to retrace even further. This 1.6 line is at about $56,500 currently, but is moving up multiple $100s every single day. So before long, this is probably going to be at about the $58,000 to $60,000 level in the coming days and weeks. If we also look at the Pi cycle top indicator, we can see this is actually the same metric basically as the golden ratio, looking at the 350-day moving average multiplied by 2. But then again, we can see this 111 days moving up absolutely rapidly, and before long again it'll probably be far above that $50,000 level. And like we said, there were some indications hitting these upper lines that maybe we were due a little bit of a pullback. If we look at something like the active address sentiment indicator here, we can see just the divergence from the mean we had just over the past few weeks, the absolutely rapid price ascension we have that maybe wasn't fully backed up by a rapid increase in the amount of network users. So we can see this is actually, just as I filmed this, crossed beneath this upper red deviation band, which historically has indicated a little bit more of a pullback is to come. And especially if we look at something like the funding rate, which still, even now after about a 10% retracement, remain incredibly high. If I just change this to a 24-hour period, we can see ideally we want this to maybe flip negative or at least go a little bit closer to zero. The fact that people are still paying such a huge, massive premium to long BTC, even after this massive exponential price increase, maybe indicates that maybe enough people haven't lost enough money. I know it's harsh to say, but usually the market punishes the majority of participants. And if a majority are still longing Bitcoin, even after this ascension, maybe we need to flush those longs out just a little bit more. And especially if we look at the Crosby ratio, we can see this has timed this top call pretty much to perfection. We can see over the last year really, every time we've entered this red area, it doesn't necessarily mean an immediate stark decrease is followed, but we've always had a little bit of a price stagnation. And we reach the absolute upper boundary of this red sell area. And like we can see historically, this has really preceded pullbacks in pretty much every one of Bitcoin's large price increases over the past year. So we can see from all of these circumstances, Bitcoin's price didn't actually come down to this green buy area. I think if we come just down to this neutral zero line, price rebounds there, maybe get a little bit of a wick beneath there on this metric, then that would be a good indication that maybe price has cooled off just enough that we can maybe regain some momentum, more fuel to the fire to really sustain another upside move. And especially if we look at the long and short-term holders, we can see this has increased massively, the amount of short-term holders. So we can actually see capital is being passed from old hands, Bitcoin holders that have been holding for an extended period of time, into new market participants. Now, a huge portion of this may be through the Bitcoin ETFs, which has undoubtedly have an incredibly bullish impact on the Bitcoin price. But usually we do see similar price action to this in a Bitcoin cycle, especially at this stage in a bull cycle. And usually we do actually see a little bit of a decrease in this, where maybe short-term holders as price decreases a little bit, get a little bit scared. Maybe it's their first time investing or trading Bitcoin, and we see some longer term market participants scooping up some BTC, potentially on a discount. So I think if we see this start to curl over again, that'll be another great indication that Bitcoin has probably pulled back sufficiently and we could potentially move even higher. And if we look at the Bitcoin growth since the cycle lows, we can see 20% pullbacks are actually very common in a Bitcoin bull cycle. And to say we've only had, I think, one very slight decrease of over 20% in this entire bull cycle from the market lows, which was just a very temporary wick, maybe we are overdue a little bit of a more sustained pullback, especially as we've only seen this 10% pullback currently. And usually at this stage in a cycle, give or take a few weeks, Bitcoin does actually have a more sustained drawdown period, like we could see in this 2011 to 2015 cycle, which was actually just before the halving event, like we could see in this 2015 to 2018 cycle, which was just before the halving event, and again in the 2018 to 2022 cycle, which was a little bit before that, but again just before the halving event, which, as we sit now about a month away from the halving, maybe people are trying to front run this a little bit. If we look at the miner revenue, we can see over the last 2 cycles, Bitcoin's price did actually pull back noticeably just prior to the Bitcoin halving event, like we could see here in 2016. And if we just zoom in on 2020 here, it wasn't quite as stark, but we'd already had this huge sell-off due to the COVID 2020 dump. So maybe people are front running in anticipation of a price dip after the halving event. But if we just go to the Bitcoin chart here, what we can do is something we do quite frequently on the channel here. I'm going to look at the previous cycle to actually look at potentially where we could see some Bitcoin strength, some buy support. So I think immediately if we just look to this line here, which was where we set the first all-time high peak in the almost double peak cycle we had in 2020 into 2021. But I think that'll be a key level to watch. The previous all-time high will also be a very crucial level of support, I'd imagine. And then probably down here where this has acted as a level of support and resistance and flipped multiple times in Bitcoin's past. So if we just then scroll over to the current price action, we can see that all of these lines have actually been fairly influential, especially if we drop down to a lower time frame here. We can see that they're around this $59, $58, $60,000 level was a key level of Bitcoin support as we bounced off that after a slight retracement when we first hit the all-time high, well, previous all-time high now. And then again, the $63,000 level was a key area of resistance as we first came up that saw price pause and stagnate a little bit. And in this most recent dip, we were actually pretty close to bouncing off that level. So I'd say those are the 3 key levels to watch. And especially like we looked earlier, if we load up the golden ratio multiplier, we can see that a lot of these lines are actually going to converge with some on-chain and technical market cycle metrics. As this comes up to this $58,000 to $60,000 level, I think this will be combining to provide confluence of buy support if prices to dip over the coming days and weeks just a little bit further. And again, the Pi cycle top reiterates this as this is coming here. If we were to dip, this is going to probably reach this previous all-time high, maybe act as a little bit of resistance. But I think this is really going to reiterate a really key pivotal level in the Bitcoin price action. Not only is it a very psychological level, a previous all-time high, but if we see that there's actually price finding support and resistance, and this is converging with a technical market cycle chart, I think once we can convincingly break above this, find support and bounce higher, then that'll be a really solid foundation for a much higher move to the upside. Also, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to ensure you're receiving all of our content as soon as it's released. And make sure to check out all the resources we've discussed today, as well as the many more that are all available on lookintobitcoin.com, your number 1 source for Bitcoin information. So just to summarize, following Bitcoin's recent exponential run-up that led us considerably higher than our previous all-time high, many indicators were signaling for a cool-off in the Bitcoin price action, which we've now seen of about 10+%, but many are speculating if this could go even lower. And with the halving event almost exactly 1 month away as I film this, there may have also been some front-running of the usual sell-off we see post-halving event. Like we could see historically, we usually see quite a big run-up in anticipation, but a little bit of a sell-off, maybe people front-running the news before it actually happens. And like we saw on the charts, the $58,000 to $60,000 region is likely to be a very key level support, as well as that $63K, just for a little bit lower than we've seen the current local lows set. And that $60K level would also align pretty nicely with a 20% retracement, which we do usually see multiple of during a Bitcoin bull cycle, but this cycle we've barely seen one. So we need to also consider that the previous all-time high will be pivotal. As I film this, we're actually slightly beneath that, but if we do regain that, be prepared for price to rebound very quickly with no more pullback. Like we can see with the ETF, the market dynamics of just the liquid supply of BTC and the halving event, market dynamics are just so much in Bitcoin's favor at the minute. We might not see long sustained drawdowns that we have seen historically in previous Bitcoin cycles. Maybe the market is just going to gobble up that discounted BTC as soon as it's available, and price is going to rebound to new all-time highs before we know it. If you like this video, then please visit lookintobitcoin.com, where you can also consider becoming a site subscriber to gain access to professional resolution charts, advanced macro and portfolio data tools, in-depth crypto industry reports, live and personalized indicator alerts, private TradingView scripts, and more, all for a fraction of the standard industry price. And let me know down in the comments below and on social media, where do you think Bitcoin's local low could be set in this downwards retracement? Do you think we're going to go even lower, potentially to that 60k level? Or do you think the lows are already in and we're about to bounce back and send it to new all-time highs? As I said, let me know. I look forward to reading and replying to all of them. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.